So good morning. Let's begin the 43rd webinar organized by the Ramco Cements Limited, Association of Consulting Civil Engineers Bangalore chapter and Bangalore Institute of Technology. We have distinguished panelists today, Dr. M.U. Ashwath, Principal, Bangalore Institute of Technology, Dr. H.B. Balakrishna, Professor and Head Civil Engineering, Bangalore Institute of Technology. And we have the speaker of the day, Dr. Arvind Bhashyam. So the welcome would be done by Dr. Balakrishna, and the speaker would be introduced by Mr. Purnachandra. So before we hand over this thing to the panelist and the speaker, let me just brief about the associated organization today. Association of Consulting Civil Engineers India, with its headquarters in Bangalore, is a premier professional body of consulting civil engineers with over 22 centers spread across the country. It has more than 5,000 members on its roll. It was formed and registered in 1985. Initially, it was named as the Association of Consulting Structural Engineers, which was later renamed as Association of Consulting Civil Engineers in 1987. And Association of Consulting Civil Engineers India has been taking number of initiatives, especially giving honors and appreciating individuals and or organizations for achieving excellence in various domains of civil engineering. They have this annual ACC awards, and they are also very active in celebrating Engineers Day. In fact, for the past so many years, we have collaborated with them for the Engineers Day celebration, and it has been quite interesting. Over the last 12 years, we had a very good association with Association of Consulting Civil Engineers. The Ramco Cements Limited, as you all know, is the flagship company of the Ramco Group, and it has 12 brands of cements which is manufactured, which are of OPC, PPC, PSC, SC, and rapid hardening Portland cement. The basic idea of having so many brands is that we have customized the cement based on application. So what we do is that we go to the customer's place, our civil engineers go and collect the feedback, and based on which the cement is customized, and then we recommend the right type of cement, because that is very important. We need to understand the slump, the strength requirement of concrete. Ramco Cement is manufactured in 8 state-of-the-art production facilities that includes integrated cement plant and grinding units with a current total production capacity of 16.5 million tons. And our expansion projects at Kurnool, Odisha, Vizag, and Kolagat in Kolkata will enable us to hit the 20 million tons per annum very shortly. Ramco Cements produces ready-mix concrete and dry-mix mortar products and operates one of the largest wind farms in the country. When Shri Manubhai Shah, Central Minister for Industries in the late 50s, came to Madras to meet the industrialist, he called upon our founder, Shri P.A.C. Ramaswamy Raja, and requested him to start a cement factory in Tamil Nadu at that point of time. This was readily accepted by our founder, and this marked the birth of the Madras Cements Limited at that point of time in 1961. Later, it was changed to the Ramco Cements Limited. So that is the brief history of that. And since then, we have been introducing various technological features in our cement manufacturing process. And we also have a research center, the Ramco Research Development Center. Much before the COVID-19 broke out, we at Ramco Cements, driven by our senior management, adopted various measures, especially social distancing, disinfecting vehicles, health conditions over 10,000 truck drivers were monitored. And after the pandemic spread, the company rushed to the aid of various state governments with an assistance of more than 7.5 crores. And the company has also taken care of about 8,000 workers, including 6,000 from North India. And we have done a lot of activities in various places so that the underprivileged was taken care of. Of course, ACCI Bangalore, Mysore chapter have supported our initiatives in this webinar series. And in fact, one of the key features of the webinar series that we had was the organizing of the virtual conference on geotechnical engineering, RAGI 2020, which was well organized by ACC Mysore chapter. And ACC Bangalore was also instrumental in organizing several panel discussions through webinars. In fact, we had well-known consultants from Bangalore, and Dr. M.U. Ashwath himself also contributed to many of the panel discussions and in organizing many of the webinars that we had. And because of the support from ACCI Bangalore, Mysore, we could have very good speakers who could share their experiences with us. In fact, we had topics ranging from relevance of blended cement, professional risk of civil engineering consultant, which was taken by Dr. Premanand Shonai of Mangalore. Then we had crack-free concrete reinforcement detailing concrete buildings, challenges for civil engineers and how to overcome them. On smart cities, we had proportioning of concrete mixes, best practices for modern construction, a Panchabhuta approach, which was again done by Dr. Shashi of Bangalore. Again, ready-mix concrete, we had various aspects on that. Ferro cement and its applications, sustainability housing at the time of COVID, overview of emerging trends in concrete technology, green building and nano architecture. So we had something on procurement also, materials, the environment and pile raft foundation, role of M-sand at admixtures in concrete, special concrete and its application. So like this, we had almost topics ranging from from execution to design to macro level topics, which I am sure would have been of interest to various construction professionals, as was seen by the feedback that we have received. Now, let me just give a brief biodata of Dr. H.B. Balakrishna, who would be introducing who would give the welcome address. He is the professor and head Department of Civil Engineering at Bangalore Institute of Technology. He has completed his graduation in civil engineering in 1985 from Malnad Engineering College, Hassan, and postgraduate in computer programming from Mysore University. Later, he completed his M.Tech Marine Structures in 1991 from KREC Surathkal, a PhD in civil engineering from Bangalore University. So that is Dr. Balakrishna, who would be giving the welcome address for today's webinar. So let me invite Dr. Balakrishna for giving the welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anil Kumar, sir. Thank you very much. I am very happy. Principal Dr. M.U. Ashwath, who is currently the President of Association of Consulting Civil Engineers India. I welcome you, sir. Arvind Bashyam, sir, who is heading the Civil Engineering Department at Christ University. Welcome to Arvind Bashyam, sir. Also welcome Anil Kumar Pillai, sir, who is the moderator for the day and is the General Technical Services from Ramco Cements. Welcome you, sir. I also welcome Purnachandra Tejasvi, Faculty Coordinator of Indian Concrete Association of Consulting Civil Engineers. Welcome, Purnachandra. We have the professional affiliation with many organizations. Association of Consulting Civil Engineers is one. We are very happy to welcome Rajesh Kannan, sir, current chairman of Bangalore Center, Srikant Channel, secretary, Savin, and all the office bearers of Association of Consulting Civil Engineers. I welcome all my colleagues, participants for the webinar. Now I request Purnachandra to introduce the present today's speaker, Arvind Bashyam, sir. Purnachandra, over to you. 1 second, I request Dr. M.U. Ashwath to speak about our institution and speak a few words about the webinar. Ashwath, sir, over to you. Ashwath, I think
the bandwidth problem, I believe, sir.
Yeah, I think we'll join back. We'll connect them. You're having issues connecting him, sir.
I'll request
Mr. Purnachandra Tejasvi can go ahead with the introduction of the speaker, so that once Dr. Ashwath comes back, then we can have his discussion. So let me request Mr. Purnachandra for Dr. Ashwath, you are able to hear us, sir?
Yeah, I can listen, but there is some problem.
Can you go ahead with your, we would request you to give a brief overview.
Welcome all of you. I welcome all of you and thank you for your support, and special thanks to Arvind sir for presentation, and greetings from ACC and Bangalore Institute of Technology. Thank you very much, and please go ahead.
Let me request Mr. Purnachandra to introduce Dr. Arvind Bashyam, please.
Good morning, everyone. I am privileged to introduce today's webinar speaker, Dr. Arvind Bashyam, sir. Dr. Arvind Bashyam completed his bachelor's degree from BMS College of Engineering, PG degree in Civil Engineering from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and PhD from IIT Madras. Dr. Arvind Basham, sir, wherein he was involved in development of systems for analysis of transmission line towers. Dr. Basham later moved on to industry and has worked with various design organizations at various levels outside India, which include India and Writing Engineers, United Kingdom, MSCEB, Bahrain, Ranel, Chief Structural Engineer in various prominent projects like Petronas Towers, Malaysia, Jura Housing, Libya, Light Rail Transit System, Malaysia, Idle Plant, and many more. Dr. Basham, upon returning to India, joined MSRIT and served as Associate Professor, involving in various developmental activities in Civil Engineering Department between 2011 and 13. Dr. Basham later joined and served as HOD, Civil Engineering at BMSIT, bringing the department in present University of Civil Engineering. Dr. Basham is a member of various professional organizations, include ASCE, ICI, ACCE, ICE, Institute of Engineers. Dr. Basham has to his credit more than 30 publications in reputed and peer-reviewed journals. Thank you. Over to HOD, Dr. Balkrishna, sir. Sir.
Thank you, Purnachandra, for that introduction. Over to Anil Kumar Pillai, sir, to continue with this session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. So I don't want to take much of our time, and let us give the floor to the speaker. Already 262 participants have already joined online, and there are some of them who are going live on the Facebook. So we have a good participation from the construction professionals. So with those few words, let me again welcome Dr. Arvind Basham, and you can continue with your presentation, sir. I hope the share presentation link is already activated for you. You can go ahead, sir. Thank you so much.
Good morning to all. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. Quite surprised to see that even after 23 years, this Petronas Towers is attracting so much of interest in this. It's really heartening to know that. At that point of time, you never realized that it's going to be like this. But now I see the impact of this. So let's see, what is a high-rise building? So a building which creates different conditions in your design, construction, and use of those than those that exist in common buildings of a certain region and a period. See, most of us are very familiar with the design of a multi-storied building, but the height is limited. And second thing is, when you are trying to create this kind of a building, your construction technology also changes, and you tend to use different materials also here. So let's see what are the things that we did at that point of time. Maybe it had become obsolete, but it had a lot of impact at that point of time. Now, there is a heavy demand for the high-rise building, basically due to scarcity of the land in the urban areas. And also there is an increase in demand for the business and also for the residential space. And of course, every country is trying to become a developed one. So there is an economic growth in this. And in addition to that, you can always see there's a lot of technological advancements been happening and innovations. Innovations in the structural system, and also there is a desire for the aesthetics in urban settings. So Everybody now, you see that, especially if you look at Hong Kong, Singapore, or Kuala Lumpur, they have this concept of city skyline.
There is some disturbance from somewhere. Suraj, can you unmute the audio of other speakers, please?
All others are muted, sir. It's coming from Arvind's place, I suppose. Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Okay, the concept of city skyline, and also there is a cultural significance and the prestige involved. Actually, the whole idea was having this Petronas Tower was then the Prime Minister, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, he wanted to put Malaysia on the world map. He said it should be there. Everyone should look at Malaysia now. So that's how is the whole concept started with this Petronas Tower. And you can see in history that the human aspiration is to build higher. That shows their strength. Okay, I have a much higher building, so I'm stronger than you. So those kind of things have been there. So what you see here, most of us are very familiar with the type of loading that you have. That is, the floor systems account for a major portion of the gravity loading, and also they influence the structural behavior and resistance. And in office building and residential building, you have long spans now, and residential and other buildings you may have a short continuous span. And we have different kinds of flooring system: concrete, pre-stressed concrete, steel, may even have a composite steel also, steel and concrete thing. And you're also familiar with the kind of load that we have, that could be the wind load. Because the building not being tall, we have not paid too much of attention to the environmental load like wind. A wind is a very specialized one now. Now you can see that many universities offer a master's degree in wind engineering course. Basically, to understand the wind, you need to have, it's an interdisciplinary one, where you have to bring in fluid dynamics, structural aspect of it, including even architectural aspects of it. You will see how it makes a difference. You're all aware of the power law of the wind load, how the load varies with the square of the velocity. I'm not going deeper into it, so you know that any code will take care of that. The most important thing is this was a work done by Fazlur Rahman. I would say that he is the father of the all tall buildings. That you see that in this graph, as the number of stories increases, you find that the cost per floor increases drastically. Right? If you have an ordinary one in this, you have the difference of this is about £40 per square foot. That's what it is. That shows there is a premium for height. It doesn't come just like that. So you see that in the increased height, about if it's a steel building with more than 150 meters in height, sorry. It increases that the wind load becomes a dominant one, and for concrete it is 250, it becomes a dominant one. There are various kinds of a structural system for such kind of a tall structure. You have a moment resisting frame, you have brace frame, shear wall system, core and outrigger systems, and you also have tubular system, frame tube, truss tube, bundle tube. There are various kinds of structural systems that you can adopt. Of course, you can make your own innovations. A lot of things are coming up. It all depends upon your how your architectural plan is and how your type of environmental loads are and how are you going to tackle that. Then you can also have a hybrid kind of a system. You can see that this is the Fazlur Rahman's work. Which says that different type of structural system which can be adopted for a different height of the building, the number of floors. You can have a semi-rigid and rigid frame, then with frame with shear walls and tube, frame with shear wall band and the outrigger. Then you can also have a frame tube with the interior shear wall and trusses. And similarly, you can have brace frames also as you go towards it, you can move towards the tubular section. Now, these are the various kinds of structural systems that we have. These are evolved over a period of time. Now, with this background, let's get into the Petronas Towers. Now, what is the innovative aspect of this is the design and installation of the sky bridge, which connected to towers. That is a very interesting aspect of it. That required a careful analysis. You'll see the video later and see that how the original design was and how the design was modified later. So at that point of time in 92, 94, Malaysia did not have that kind of technology to do the high strength concrete. So one of the requirements or one of the points that was laid out by the Malaysian government was that to this company, was that at the end of this completion of the Petronas Tower, they should hand over the technology of making high strength concrete. That was in mid 90s. And there was no technology to pump concrete to this height. It also demanded innovative response. That's where a German company came and helped us to resolve this issue. And the next one was it had a highly irregular soil condition, and that demanded innovative engineering and construction strategies for us. Now, this is the country just located north of the equator, and it has experiences southwest winds from April to October and northeast winds from October to February. Why I'm stating that is the wind probably must be was the dominant load in designing the Petronas Tower, because this region is not prone to so much of seismic activities, but of late they're seeing that they're revising their map. And then you can see that certain kind of activities had happened earlier, but we went to the record and we never found that was as severe as it was in Taipei. Taipei is every minute you can expect an earthquake in that. So it's very active seismically. So, and the problem posed was by the subterranean porous limestone cliff that is rising beneath the sandy and thick soil information, what they call it as Kenny Hill. This is the local term that is used in Malaysia for that kind of soil. And that has a major impact on siting the foundation design of the Petronas Tower. Actually, the original location of that was on a cricket field. And later that was used as a horse track. So that was the original location. So they had done some preliminary investigations, and then based on that, they had fixed the location of this tower. So once we went there, we noticed that that location was not right, in the sense because the cliff underneath this was dipping down very steeply. And if we had built a tower on that kind of thing, probably it would have collapsed by now, or it would have leaned like a leaning tower of Pisa. So we had to carry out geological subsurface investigation on that to relocate the site. So the whole area was about 100-acre site, and it's at the intersection of two important streets in Kuala Lumpur. One is called the Jalan Ramli and Jalan Ampang. Jalan is the Malay word to say it's a road. That's it. And the east of the towers has the office space as 218,322 square meters of the office space, and it houses the headquarters of Petronas Corporation, which is the major oil gas corporation of Malaysia. And to support the services and other things, you have a tower next to it. It's called Ampang Tower, and it has a shopping center also. It has a symphony hall and a mosque and a utility plant to serve the entire district. The whole area you can think of as a district. So huge is that space. It's grown up vertically, and more than 10 acres of the park over there. So as I said, the site for the Petronas Tower had to be moved approximately by 61 meters to southwest after intensive geotechnical and geological investigation. So we noticed that at the original site there was a porous limestone cliff, which steeped down and to a depth of about 120.4 meters. And this was very difficult to do the piling work in that because the pile length would vary, and this can cause differential settlement in this. And second thing was the composition of the limestone cliff was a concern to this. So it was taken at the point of time, we took a call and say, okay, let's move this away from this because that was a prime land and the Prime Minister wanted that to be housed there because it's sort of a heart of the city. So we investigated and then we found that about 60 to 70 meters from the original site, we could locate the tower and piles that you have found you on which the building is resting at the point of time would rest on the rock. So then the cost was estimated that we found that we would be saving about $20 million in foundation itself by moving to the favorable location. So you can imagine how much of additional work we had to do if we had the building in the original location. Second, we have to look at the ways where we can get the concrete to the site on time because that space is heavily congested. So we had to redesign the area and see that the tower space that is being provided, which is a 5-acre land out of the 100 acres, and it is surrounded by green space and it is easily accessible from both the important roads of Dramli and Ampang. So this has very significant effect on the project. Otherwise, everything has to go around and come to the site. Second, at the time of concreting, both at the foundation level and at doing the tower, we wanted a continuous flow of concrete. That means that should be made as a one-way for the truck to park and then move on. There was specified time given for each truck to wait, so that otherwise we would not use that concrete if it has waited for more than that specified period of time. So that's how, by changing the location of the site, we were able to address some of the geotechnical and the transportation issues at the time of concreting this. Now look at the architectural design. It's a delicacy of a local wooden screen with the richness of traditional weaving. That is what is called a Songket weaving. It is cherished for centuries and owned by the royalty of Malaysia. Cesar Pelli, who was the chief architect of this building, he's from United States. He had no idea about Islamic culture. So on the suggestion of the Prime Minister Mahathir, he was handpicked by the Prime Minister of Malaysia at the time. And he said, why don't you do this country, get to know more about the Islamic culture, see that if that can be brought into this building. So what he did was he toured the entire West Malaysia, and then he got some idea. He looked at all the specialities of the Malaysian, especially he looked at the Songket weavings, and also he saw that 8-pointed star, which was a form used to generate the floor plan of the of this Petronas Tower, and it created a repetitive pattern that is for the curtain wall and the reminiscent of the geometrical forms that we have. So, and also it increased the surface areas of the towers, and it also maximized the views. So that's how the whole floor plan got evolved in this. You can see this columns here, and then you have the pointed things here. This is the typical floor plan that is obtained by rotating the 8-pointed star. The foundation of this, you can see here that the hill is just sloping down. So your pile will be founded onto this. This is the location of it. Actually, it cleaves down like this. Don't have it. So now if you look at the soil and the foundation, it has irregular bedrock beneath that. And it has a diaphragm wall, which is about 2.5 feet thick, 30,000 metric tons of ton of each tower spread over this concrete. You can see that the whole thing has been piling being done. And have a 2 raft foundation that is about 15 feet thick, containing about 13,000 cubic meters of concrete. And this is how the tower rests on it. You have 208 barrack piles of rectangular, 9 feet by 5 feet, and 197 to 380 feet. That is on a control setting. The length varies because of the dip in the cliff. Now, coming to the earlier structural design concept. So the original design was something like this. That is how it was conceived. Because it's an 8-pointed star. When you rotate it on this, we thought we can have columns at these locations, at this point, where you can see the darker one. So under the windowed L-shaped corner would experience a biaxial moment and reduce the frame stiffness. That was one of the disadvantages that we had. Then after that, we said, why can't we do it, have a column at the mid-surface, so that the windows can wrap around us, so that you can have an external view. But the column had a biaxial bending, and the loss of frame stiffness is avoided because the column would be the thing. Now, what you saw here was offset by that, but the disadvantage was that this was blocking the view. So Caesar Pelli was not happy with this design. He said, no, this is not what we want. So what we did was to have the column so that it can move around like this, like what we have here. You can rotate this circle. So you get columns like this. This is how it was rotated. When you rotate, I can have at this junction, the column, this can project out so that this is open to this view. And you can have facade here in this region. So that's how we evolved a structural form by rotating the star and placing the column onto this. These are circular columns around us. And then you have the shear wall inside. So now the one it had was the one core central unit for the lift and tower exits and mechanical services, etc. And it has the bus stairs and non-structural walls, and there would be less effective cores along the top. So that's how you can see that how the structural form evolved. Now you see that the form that evolved formed a soft tube. Many times we neglect the in-plane stiffness of the floor slab, but it has a tremendous in-plane stiffness that can be used to resist the lateral stress. So this is what we made use of in order to resist the lateral loads on this. So we formed soft tubes around that, and we also had that kind of a floor slab placed around. And at this point, the column was sloped inwards. And I'll show this a little later how it was done. And the tower, you can see that of the two is supported by 16 cylindrical columns placed in the inner corner in a star shape, and it steps back 6 times. You can see here, it steps back 6 times. And what you see here as you vary is the grade of the concrete was also varied as we went up. Okay. Now, if you look at this, what you have here, this is the core box of the concrete thing. Then you have the bands of steel reinforcing this. Then you have the concrete beams linking the column to form a ring frame around that bustle. And the steel beam support the floor slab. It's a composite. So you have the steel beam running in from this. Probably you can see in the floor plan. You can see these are the steel beams running around this. This is the composite in nature. And you have this column supporting this. So this is how we evolved this tower and the adjoining one into this. Now this is where we had the core shear wall around that. So this is how the whole structural system was formed. But in that, I need to cater for the wind load also. That is a prominent one. If you look through this structural system classification for the tall towers, there are a lot of papers being published, but the important one was of Fazlur Rahman, and the other one is by M.M. Ali. M.M. Ali is also from Illinois Institute of Technology. What you see here is they classify the structural system as external and internal. In the sense, when you design a multi-storied building, you design such that you don't differentiate between lateral load and the gravity load. You say that entire load is taken by the one particular, that is the framing system of it. This is okay as long as the height of the structure is okay. But as the height increases, then you have the same kind of system may not be possible. So we try to see the separation of this. That I have a separate structural system for the lateral load and the gravity load, and somehow I interlink them so that it helps in this. So here we use the concept of the outrigger. This has been there for a long time, especially when you look at the boats and all that. They have these two, the outriggers, which tend to balance the boat as it's considered. This isn't spread out. So this gives stability to the boat as it travels through. The same thing, if you have a crane here, you have this kind of a thing that is where the crane is supported, so that even if it lifts up, these are the legs is going to balance that. The same concept is used in the outrigger system. And it is tied to the central core system so that the wind loads are collected and transferred to that. So that is the system that we have adopted. That is the conventional outrigger concept that you can have here at a floor height. I have several floors height of beam transferring the load that will have it at certain levels. These spaces will be used for the housing some mechanical equipment and other things, or certain places because it may be covered, the whole area to be there. Or some places is being used in the office area also. So that's how we use the outrigger. So to transfer the overturning moment of the core to the outboard of the core, so that it just gets transferred to this column that is there. There are 16 out exterior columns of this building. So the idea behind this virtual outrigger concept is to use floor diagram, a diaphragm, which is stiff and strong in their own plane. That's why I said we have taken the in-plane resistance of the slab into account to render this. This was the idea given by Shankar Nair, who is in US, so that the same idea being used here. So if I use this, there is using this by advantage of using this kind of a belt truss. You can see here, this is a flow diagram. So these act as the bottom card, and this acts as the top card in between the members, which gets connected. So we need to locate the outrigger columns where they can conveniently engage to the truss. That's what is the advantage of this. And when it is braced, this is where the transfer forces take place between the flow diaphragm and the shear wall of the frame. The complicated truss to core connection is eliminated here. And if there can be a differential shortening or settlement between the core and the outboard column, and this trigger is able to balance that because it is stiff in its own plane. So that is the advantage of it. But on a vertical plane, it is very flexible. We wanted something to be in plane, it should be very strong so that it can transfer the forces. At the same time, vertically, it is flexible enough to do that. So that's the advantage of this. For the wind, we had the rubberized sheeting and the galvanized ship to anchor the strain. So earthquake was not the dominant force because it's not found to be thing, a very dominant one here, as it's not seismically active into this. And we have used an inexpensive and effective damper inside this so that the flutter of the thing is, the mass is avoided. So as I said, there's the column as a street here at this height is just being inclined. So you can estimate what is the horizontal and the vertical forces acting onto this. You can estimate this force and design this for this. So there's an inclined column that we have here that goes up, and then you do that. This is what we see here. Now, as you go up, you have to have the change in the grade as well as the size of the column. So this is basically your moment diagram that you had for a structural analysis. I'm not going to deep into this. And we did a multi-frame analysis to find out the forces onto all the members and all that. This is the reflection diagram. Then when this is the construction started, so we can see that these are the exposed walls. You can see this, how it's being connected here. And this is where we are going to have the facade with a glass, the stainless steel onto this. It's covered with this. So it's partially covered with the stainless steel. That's how the cladding has been done. So you have 3 concrete mixes to optimize the size, strength, and the stiffness of this car. Now, this is the white flange beam that is being used here to add the horns to take care of the shear and the additional bending moment that is there when you have connected to the columns. So the concrete outriggers between 38 to 48 floors connect to the core perimeter of the column. So that increases the stiffness of it. This is basically how it was detailed. Now, coming to this, the whole concept of this tower, the initial design was we had 2 towers and there is a space between the 2. So Cisapilli looked at it, he said, somehow I need to bring in a harmony between these 2 towers. That means they can't stand separately. So he just looked at it and said that, okay, I'm looking at the sky, I'm looking at the universe, so let me have a way of saying that. So he said, let me connect these 2 with a bridge. That's what he wanted. He said, come up with an idea how these 2 can be connected with a bridge. Now you can see that there are various designs that came up with this bridge. This was the concept that was used. You have a cable supporting all these things. So now the problem here is the 2 towers are free to move in their own. That means it can move in different directions. We show that simulation later in the video. And this has to be a shallow girder walkway connecting the 2. So you can think it look like as a 3-hinge arch. And what was the original design was something like this, where they had a conceptual thing of suspending the bridge through the cables supported at different points. So that was the thing. Second, to transfer this load through this cable, again, it's not an easy thing. So I need to look for something which is sturdier. Now, if I look at something which is sturdier, and if one building moves this way, the other tower moves the opposite direction, the bridge is going to twist. In that process, it is going to twist my support. If you have to design for that, well, the sections will become very uneconomical. So now you need to have a bridge which would allow the free movement of the support that is here. That means I need to have a hinge here. You can have a hinge or you can convert it into a 2-hinge arch. That's also a possibility. You can do that. So what we thought was, why not we make it as a 3-hinge arch principle, so that this is on a hinge, this is on a hinge, this is on a hinge, and this is being connected, and this here abuts the tower, is not really connected to tower. So that if this tower is moved in a different directions also, this bridge will remain as it is. It will not be twisted. So this is what we looked at. So each leg of this spans from a spherical bearing, which allows the rotation. You can see here, this is how it is. it rotates the whole thing, it rotates onto that. This is the spherical bearing that you have. And the wind forces are important for this design consideration, not only for the design, even during the erection. You'll see what kind of problems we face during the erection. So this is how the structure was conceived. And we had three tune mass dampers inside the 34th and 35th floor in order to reduce the vibration of the leg, and so that it avoid the metal fatigue. Basically, it's an external damper fitted into the leg of that. So what happens is that beyond a certain frequency of that wind, the dampers become active, they absorb that energy. That means they dissipate that energy, so that your leg of that bridge is protected from that. That basically is the idea of that. So now this is the drawing of that. How do you have the bridge? This is the bearing that you have. This is the cyclic column that you have here. So from here, you have the bridge. This can be broken into several segments assembled at the side. And then you see the shape of this, how it's going to be. And from here, now, how are you going to erect this bridge? That is the problem. Okay, I come up with a design. I have two mass dampers inside. That's absolutely no problem. This is taken care of the flutter as well as this. And I also have the camber diagram for this thing. But how am I going to erect this at this point of time? I have broken up into different small pieces here, assembled, but how is it possible to erect this bridge on construction at the site? Is likely to experience heavy rain, can experience gale at that point of time. How am I going to do it if I encounter these kind of situations? So this is one of the things. But to arrive at this configuration, we had discussion with the contractors also to how it's possible. They said it's possible to erect. So on that basis, we did this. So it's a double-deck bridge spanning 58.4 meters, connecting the two towers at the sky lobby elevator. Structural steel was used as it's easier to make and then transport it to a site. So we have used 2-inch arch and a continuous flow girders. It's a shallow walkway. And we've done the aerodynamic study of the tower of the bridge legs also. And the response also you have determined on this. So it's about 1.1 meter diameter with 5 legs. We have done the test for the fatigue and also for the loss of support, creep and shrinkage, and certain movement compensation that can happen, and for the bridge facade panel movement also. All these things have been studied, and finally we arrive at the configuration of the bridge. Now I'll show the video of this erection of the whole thing. This is actually the view of the Petronas radar, which shows the sky bridge. This is the leg which I said, it is broken into pieces and then assembled at the side. Now you can see that how this whole thing is being developed here at a bare steel frame around this. Now you can see that this is the leg which is coming here. It is fixed at this point. It is at the support, and it's supported. It just abuts the tower at this point and tower at this point, and you have the glass facades covering all this thing. So this is basically a box. So the box which is supported at these points. So what she's actually saying that this has got a symbolic thing, as I said, he's just looking at the universe. It's a way of appreciation of that and saying that, okay, this is the thing I'm connecting the two, like you're folding your hands. So I'm connecting the two, and this way I have a bridge coming into display. Now, this bridge has a functional role in the sense it's connected to towers, and it also acts as a visitor gallery for this. As it moves around, they can see the whole thing, the entire Kuala Lumpur city. So now what you see here, there is a dual level here. This is the floor slab of this. There's one connection here and the other connection here. So it is a dual deck bridge connecting the two towers. Now, this is the simulation what you are seeing for the tower. Now you see that the tower can move. This you can twist the bridge. Can see the twisting of the bridge. So what we did was we have to look at the alternatives of this. The original design of the bridge was something like this. Something like this. This was the original design of the bridge that what was conceived at that point of time. It remained the same. Nowhere we made any changes. That they thought that you can support it with this kind of a stiff cable here, and the tower can come in between. These are ways to support it. But there is a gap here. Probably you can make it cantilever from this side, abut it at this point. Absolutely no problem. But the whole problem here is when the tower moves in two different directions, those are the regions which are going to be stressed more, and this is going to twist the bridge as such, because this is going to, depending on the moment, this can shorten, this can lengthen, or this can shorten and this can lengthen, and this in the process will cause the twisting of the bridge. If you have to design the bridge for this torsional effect, it is going to be pretty heavy and it's very uneconomical. So we looked at the various alternatives. Probably you can see that the movement to Tavatar, that how the bridge is getting twisted. So this is how we change the design. Now you can see that at this point, just above the bridge, the tower, and it's just a fixed support here. Then it comes down and it is resting on the socket ball bearing here. Okay. These are the various segments which can be assembled at this side and can be fixed. But how am I going to fix at this point and at this point? What technology I'm going to adopt? Now, suppose I fix it up to this point, and how am I going to bring this to this level and fix it here? I can't stand in the air and then bolt it here. So we had to do some kind of a simulation to do that. Now you can see this is how the bearing are. This is the end bearing which is resting on this. This in turn transfers the forces to the column which is there, and then through this frame it goes to this, and this is where it is allowed to swivel about that particular joint. It moves around that. So what you're seeing here, basically you can see that. So what he's trying to say is this is what we worked out, that you have a bridge and you allow it to move so that you don't put the strain or the stress on the bridge. The tower moves freely, so the bridge also just slides along that. It doesn't move along with us. So it's able to slide. That's how it was done. You can see here. So these are the legs of the bridge, which were fabricated at Seoul, Korea, South Korea, and then shipped to Kuala Lumpur in pieces, and they were assembled at the site. The next important thing is when you have broken up into small pieces, make sure that every element fits into that, and there is no such kind of a hiccups in case of joining elements together. So that has to be ensured at the site. Now, this is what we did. This was assembled, and through the hydraulic jack, the bridge was lifted to that height of the 40 to 49 floor. And then you're going to bring it back, the legs which are there, you're going to see that leg which is attached, you push it back and connect it here. Now, is it a simple exercise? We'll see. So the whole idea is the joining will be done in the mid-air. How we are going to do that? What kind of support you're going to have? So we divided it, Sky Bridge into 5 different sections, and at that site we assembled these 5 different sections together, and then was lifted to that position. So these legs are 40 meters long, which is attached to the bridge, and this is lifted up to that point where the bridge needs to be at. Now, the bridge is now just located, it's held by the cranes in that position. Now, this each leg weighs 60 tons. Now this has to be lifted up, and then we have to join in the mid-air to this. So at the level 29, this bridge being lifted up and placed in the position. What you can see here, this is placed into the joint. This is going to be placed in the joint. Now the legs are being placed and they're held here at this point. Now the bridge is in position with the 40-meter leg. The vertical leg has been lifted up in its position. Now comes the major and the critical operation. How do we bring the leg together and connect them at the midair? So this was done with the help of the computer, so that we initially simulated this, then we started using this. Now, the rate at which this being pushed is about 12 meters per hour. And we want a clear sky to erect this so that we don't have a gusty wind to do that. If there is rain, it's going to hamper our process. We don't know whether the bridge will remain in that position or it can collapse. If it collapses, it's going to damage the entire tower, and you can't, it's very uneconomical to rebuild it again. So these are the constraints that we have, because it can hit any point of the tower when it is trying to collapse. That's being held with. And it can sway now because of the wind, because this central bridge is held by the cables at the top, and this can swing. It's like a swing now. It can move around because it's very lightly connected to this. The connection will become tighter only after the legs have been pushed into that position, because any adjustment that you need to make here can be done and then later on it can be made to abut with the towers. This, you can see the cables holding on to this. This we estimated should take about 30 hours. That is working day and night to bring this. Now you see that your people working in the design office, are they really aware of these kind of problems that you face in the construction field? So any design which is good is to be constructible. That means there should be a way to construct that. So that's exactly what we are trying to aim at this. So as soon as we started, after doing it for about 2 to 3 hours, we have a torrential rain pouring down. We couldn't do anything. What happened was the cable that is connected to the computer failed, and the computer started to malfunction. So we couldn't erect the bridge, and the everything was held in that position. It is very dangerous because anything can happen. The vertical leg can come and hit the tower. So there'll be loss of life, the loss of, I mean, there could be a damage to the entire tower, and all this thing can happen over there. We didn't know what to do at that point of time. So the only alternative that we had was to stop the erection of the bridge. If we stop the erection, if there is a strong gale, there's every possibility any kind of accident can happen. The only thing that we did was the prayer. That's all. Oh, okay, nothing will happen. We'll wait for the storm to abate. So we were erecting the bridge, and because of this torrential rain, there was a fault in the cable. So that was supplying the power to the main system, which was monitoring the. So all of a sudden, at this height, the erection stopped because the computer failed. The hydraulic jack, it doesn't know what to do, so it stopped functioning. So everything came to standstill. So now this section is dangling. Now you have a problem with this. You can't take a chance now. Anything can happen to that. So the one way is to locate the fault, get it rectified, whether you have a torrential rain or what, it doesn't matter. You have to get on with the work and complete that. So what we did is that we found that the cable failed because it was struck by lightning. So we had to locate where the cable had failed, then repair it. So once it was rectified in the night, the bridge reached this height. Now you can see the lights here. This is one where we are ready to bring it to this, but this is what is hanging there. How we are going to do that? So can you see that slowly this was moved to this temporary platform was dropped from there, and this has to be welded onto it, bolted and welded to this. You can see that operation. So what you're seeing here is the erection of highest sky bridge in the world. So that's the reason why it was recorded as a man-made miracle. So this is the basic details of it. After the completion of this, it was completed in 1998. Is used for a commercial purpose. Antenna, the spire, it is about, that is, earlier original design was there was no spire on top of it. Since we wanted to make the building as the tallest building in the world, we had to add on this spire. This is a 378 meters is the roof of this, and top floor is a 375. At 84th floor, you have the machines to clean this window cleaning machines and all that. We dropped an arm down. So wherever you have the outrigger, there we have the window cleaning machine. We dropped it arm down and cleaned up that whole space. So the total cost was 1.6 billion. So this is what is that only those who dare to fail greatly can achieve greatly. This is what we saw from this. So thanks for your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome.
Thanks for that wonderful presentation. In fact, it was mind-boggling to see the sky bridge being erected on the tallest building. In fact, the kind of challenge that was, and you presented it so nicely. And the challenges that, in fact, any tall building was explained very clearly. And I think we can take a lot of ideas from this, ranging from geotechnical challenges to the design of buildings, and then outrigger, and then we had the lateral loads to be taken into account. So that was Dr. Arvind Bhashyam, who, with his experience as Director Structural Division at Kuala Lumpur, and now being in academics, was able to give an overview of what exactly happened during the construction of the tallest tower, and it was really interesting. Now, let us take some questions. Would it be okay if would you be ready to take some questions from the attendees? Because one of the questions that has been asked is, what was done to pump concrete to such high heights?
We used the concrete. Here the pump. That is basically the slip pump system. What you can see here is, as you concrete this, it gets lifted up. That is the whole thing resting on the green concrete. It's self-compacting concrete. So I can have the concrete being pumped to that height, and then from there I pour it down into this. So they had given a booster pump for this. This was developed by a German company. The entire thing was boosted up and pumped to this. They had to make a lot of changes to the existing design. Probably using this same technology, Burj Khalifa was also built. So the same company did the concreting work for that. You have the pumps, everything was done for this. This helped them to quote for that job.
In fact, you were mentioning about the lateral loads also that comes in such high structures. One of the questions that was related to that is, what is the maximum deflection moment at top so far recorded?
They monitored it, but generally, what in this tower is not so much as you see in Taipei or in Burj Khalifa. Generally, h by 500 is the total maximum drift that we allow for this. That is 471.58 meters of that divided by 500. That is, you are trying to restrict to that. It is less, but much below that. And this building does not have any kind of a damper or anything to restrict because the wind is not that high. Whereas if you look at Taipei 101, without damper, you couldn't have done the building. So you need an external damping device for that. Now, if it all is a failure of this can happen in case of an earthquake or anything, it fails by yielding. In the sense, the energy is dissipated by yielding of the certain joints over there. So that's the way it is an inelastic yielding of that. Now, is the deflection movement being measured so far? Yes, they are recording it, but they're not publishing it. So I really don't know how far. But so far, they have said that they have not experienced any kind of such drift. Now, if that happens, you see, at that point, that is at the top level, we check that at the bridge, it should not be, that is, the settlement should happen. It should still be okay with that. That's the reason why we have given the padding also underneath that, so that anything happens is able to adjust to that. Most important aspect of it was the geotechnical investigation, which if we had built it in the original site, probably it could have caused a problem. One of the questions was asked was the presence of the limestone facilitated the movement of the site location. Yes, because underneath it is like a cliff. You can imagine that you have a cliff. That cliff is steeping down very steeply. If you try to locate a pile onto that, each pile will have a different length. Now, if you calculate the differential settlement, I mean the settlement of this pile, it will be very high for a particular location. To balance that again, if I have to use the pile cap, it's going to be very huge and it's not advisable. So the geotechnical expert said, better not found it on this ground, move it to the other side. So they said this is not a right place to do that.
One more question is that I was told in my college master's program that the shape of outer surface is to break the EDDIs to reduce the wind effect.
Yes, if you look at this tower, you see that you have a sharp edge at that point and a rounded edge. Now, if you look at the Taipei 101 also, it has a sharp edge. Now, by doing the wind tunnel test, we found that by having the sharp edge, you can reduce the eddy. That means I'm confusing the eddy. I can reduce my base moment due to wind. So that is why you have this edges to break the sharp edges to break the eddies, and as a result, I'm reducing the wind effect onto it. I think there is a paper published also on Taipei 101 where they have shown very clearly. If you go to RDWI website, you may be able to find that they have that measured at the time when it was not aerodynamically shaped, and after making the edges sharper, checking it to the aerodynamic shape, they were able to bring down the moment drastically. So when it happens here in a tall building, the architect alone cannot decide on the thing. You have to sit with the wind engineer, structural engineer, and decide on the outer shape of the building. If you look at the original design of the Taipei 101, it's totally different, and they got a concept from the bamboo. how the bamboo is connected, the same concept being used there.
Also, you have explained this, but still there is a question, if you can explain it briefly, as to how the loads are being transferred in columns from sky bridges and how the facades were erected.
Facades were erected in segment. It's like you can connect one to the other facade. It's like you're breaking that into a segment, and one can. This is a separate specialty design of the facade is done by facade engineers. So it is like a stainless steel frame fixed to the column, and it just projects out, and then it supports onto it. There's a web which supports onto that. Then from there you carry on and providing the structural steel frame. How the loads are transferred to the column is, you saw the bracket that is there to which the legs are attached. This bracket goes and joins to the column inside, which is not visible for you because you are already covered it with the facade. So this transfers the load to the column, and that column, that is the column at that level, is taking the bridge load. It's like a corbel. You can think of a column with a corbel or a column with a small cantilever coming out of it. So as you could have seen in some of the Nama Metro thing, you have a pillar, that is, you have a pier, and then you have a small cantilever portion coming out, and your girder is sitting on top of that. It's sort of a thing. Now here, instead of that, I have a leg which is mounted to a steel frame there. Through the steel frame, the load is transferred to the column.
Thank you so much, sir. I think we have covered almost all the questions, and thanks for giving such an interesting presentation. I am sure that there would be a high level of integration that would have happened between the design engineers, site engineers, the architect, the consultant, and the client. And it is very interesting. Thank you so much for having spared your valuable time. I think one more. Yeah.
It is not really attached. There is a gap between the two small tower that is just being covered only at the lower level. So don't have much of this.
Okay. Could we have used pre-stressed concrete for construction of the sky bridge is another question that is being asked, an alternative.
See, the unit weight of steel is much less than the unit weight of concrete. We don't want to load that. We want to reduce the load onto that. So that is the basic idea of this. So that's the reason. And it is easy to fabricate and lift it up to that level. Now, suppose you had a concrete bridge, I need a rigid joint between the two, which again have to cater for the torsion. We didn't want to do all those things. So the best solution was to have a steel tower. What is the safety? What is the maximum? Concrete was M80 to M90 being used there in the concrete. Have you ever seen anywhere how M80, M90 being done? Before at the church and huge much, it generates such a amount of heat, you just can't stay there at all. Moment the concrete is poured, it starts cracking. So at first, none of us had any idea because our expertise was on designing the steel tower, not on the concrete. So what we had to do is quickly get the ice from the various places and put onto that so that it reduces. And later on, some of the things, we had to use some kind of chemicals to grout them so that the crack would close completely. It's a lesson for us, what we did, but probably it helped in the Burj Khalifa.
Thank you so much, sir, Dr. Arvind Bhashyam, sir, for having this session, and thanks Association of Consulting Civil Engineers, Bangalore Institute of Technology for having organized this. So we will meet tomorrow at 11 a.m. again for another session, another webinar by Dr. Ramana Rao from NIT Warangal. He would be there at 11 a.m. I would request the other panel, Dr. Ashwath and Dr. Balakrishna, if you want to share some viewpoints from your side. Dr. Ashwath? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Anil sir. It was a great pleasure for us to hear Arvind sir on Petronas Tower. Last year had been August, and I have walked on the Sky Bridge. So today I got more structural details. It is a happy occasion for me. And you have shared most of the so that structural engineers can understand and do the design. And especially for our MTech structure students, it was very informative. grateful to you, sir, Dr. Arvind. Thank you for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much for this.
Yeah, we thank Ramco Cements for providing us an opportunity. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful moderation. Thank you, Rajesh Kannan, sir, Shrikant Channel and Savina from ACC Bangalore Center for providing us an opportunity to conduct this webinar. And I thank our principal, Dr. M.U. Ashwath, who is the president of Association of Consulting Civil Engineers. Since today there was some internet problem, he could not join. I apologize on behalf of Dr. Ashwath. He is the backbone for us. He supports in all the activities. Bangalore Institute of Technology has got the research center, and we are doing research in the area of concrete, water resources, and environmental engineering. Thank you, Ramco Cements, once again for giving us an opportunity. I thank all my colleagues, students, and participants to make this webinar a success. Thank you, Anil sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. So let's meet tomorrow at 11 a.m. For the session by Dr. Ramana Rao from NIT Warangal on structural issues relating to geotechnical engineering. So under foundation this thing tomorrow. So let's meet tomorrow at 11 a.m. and thank you for all the organization. Thanks, Dr. Arvind sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you a lot.
Okay. Thank you, sir.